Alpha.
Hi, I am Fatima and this is Siraj. We are TTL Photography, wedding photographers and Sony Alpha ambassadors from South Africa.
Today we will be discussing how to get better wedding detail shots. It's normal to think of weddings in terms of just the bridal couple, the immediate family and the guests, but as wedding photographers we get to witness firsthand just how much detail goes into planning a wedding, and in most cases it's all these finer details that make for a very high sentimental value. So we try and capture as much of these details as possible.
We will give you an insight into how we photograph these details and how planning for them helps you with the design of the final product, and that is the wedding album. A typical wedding day for us can be broken down into 4 parts, and it is during these parts of the day where we capture the most detail. And we start off the day with the bride's getting ready session. I truly enjoy this part of the day because the bride is relaxed and comfortable with those who are around her, and this makes for a perfect opportunity to capture some fun shots. While the bride is busy with her hair and makeup, I'm either with her in the same space or in a different space away from her, where I am able to capture the wedding details. And the wedding details will be her wedding dress, her shoes, her perfume, her jewelry, and anything that she would love to be captured. When it comes to laying out your wedding details, always remember, try to incorporate the rules of thirds to get some captivating images and also some interesting angles. But hey, wait, am I going a bit too fast for you guys? You must be wondering, where's my gear and lighting? Before we go into the technical aspect of how we photograph wedding details, here are some tips and suggestions and even some secrets onto how we go about planning for these wedding details. The wedding day timeline is discussed in advance, so I'm well aware about the time that's allocated for capturing the wedding details and the bride's getting ready session. I always arrive at the bride's location an hour in advance, and I use this time to scout the space that I'll be working in to capture both the wedding details and the bride's getting ready session. And normally the space is shared by the bride and her bridesmaids and 1 or more makeup artists or hairstylists, but if I am lucky, I can have the bride alone with the makeup artist and the hairstylist. I need to take all of these into account, as knowing the amount of space I have to photograph in helps me to decide on which lens or lenses I can use to capture both detail and amazing candid moments. Within the space, I look for interesting surfaces like reflective tabletops, a fancy patterned chair, or even a clean floor. And if the surfaces are unfavorable, then I suggest that you use the bride's wedding dress, or if her veil has a beautiful lace detail on it, use that as the background or the backdrop for your detail shots. And then you have the wedding dress, and sometimes the wedding dress can take up a lot of space depending on the size and the space that you're working in. And the last thing that I want for the dress is to be placed flat on the bed. If the dress cannot be displayed on a mannequin, then I suggest that we use a strong coat hanger, as I like to display the dress from a high point. And there is one thing I have learned, and I'm sometimes guilty of it, and this is overthinking your shots. As photographers, we have this tendency to envision a shot and we try to make it happen, and we don't realize that we are actually wasting time. When it comes to this point, I actually tell myself to slow down and think that less is more. When you search for simplicity, then the details will just add on the sparkle. So I know this must be sounding so overwhelming to you, and you must be wondering which is the best gear to use for capturing wedding details. So let's take this a step at a time. So let's begin the technical part on how we go about capturing the details. My bag has my Sony A9 II with my Sony Zeiss 55mm and 85mm and a 24-70 with a speed light and an LED panel. And for detail shots, I suggest you use a prime lens And if you do not have a prime lens, then I highly recommend that you invest in one. I personally love my prime lenses, and it is because of the brilliant image quality I get from these lenses. I always shoot at a wide open apertures that will create incredible depth to the images, and shooting at these apertures separates my subject from the background, especially if I want to lead the viewer's eye to a specific spot in the image. And because I can shoot at these apertures, this works perfectly in low light situations. A prime lens is one of the best ways to sort out a photographer's dilemma when it comes to poor lighting situations. So my prime lens is paired with the amazing Sony a9 II, which is a game changer when it comes to photographing in low light situations. I'm able to push my ISO up to 3200, and coupled with my prime lens at f1.8, I don't have to worry about noise or keeping my shutter speed too low. I know it can get tricky when you photograph with a wide open aperture, but understanding your camera's autofocus system is very important. I set my Sony a9 II focus mode to autofocus continuous because it will refocus whatever I am focusing on, even if I move. And the focus area is set to flexible spot small, which allows me to pinpoint accurately where I want the camera to focus on. Another incredible feature with the Sony mirrorless range is IBIS, which is in-body image stabilization. And this works by moving the sensor in such a way that it counteracts the motion of the camera. So the next trick to better your images is something that many photographers overlook, and that is the way you hold your camera. The way you grip your camera plays a vital role in preventing camera shake. Photographing freehand can be a little tricky, especially if you are a shaky person like myself. You need to take into consideration that even your breathing can affect the focus, especially if you are shooting at wide open apertures. The tiniest shake can make you lose focus on the detail, so here are some tips. Holding your camera securely can ensure that you do not miss focus. Make sure that your fingers are wrapped around the grip of the camera. It must feel as if your camera is an extended part of your arm, and it's completely natural. Lifting the camera to your eye, make sure that your elbows are tucked into your body and placing your other palm under the lens to maintain a secure hold. The camera needs to rest in your hands. When you grip the lens by placing your fingers on top of the lens, this can add slight and unsteady jerks onto your camera, especially when zooming in and out with your lens. When you have perfected the grip, then practice on focusing. Many professional photographers will tell you this, that to get better at focusing comes with time and with a lot of practice. So take your time, hold your breath, and take the shot. As we mentioned about low light situations, knowing your camera's capability is really important for these scenarios. To help with the extra lighting, here are some tips that you can implement. Reflecting some light onto your subject by using a reflector. There's a gold and a silver reflector that you can use. It just depends on the creative style you're trying to achieve. The other methods of reflecting is using a whiteboard or a mirror. And this is dependent on the source of the key light in the room. You can also use your speed light to bounce off the wall or off the ceiling to help with a good spread of light onto your detail. Or you can get creative with a LED panel. The options are endless. And this depends on your creative style and what you are trying to achieve, and also what is convenient for you. As a wedding photographer, keeping to time is essential, so I rely on a speed light and an LED panel, as these are the most convenient tools and compact tools to help with extra lighting. I keep my choice in gear as simple as possible because wedding photography can be fast-paced, especially when you start running out of time or a delay has eaten into your time. So knowing which lens to use before an anticipated moment contributes to getting the images that you want. At the end of the day, we can arrive with many expectations, but knowing how to improvise as a photographer is the key to achieving great shots. So now that we have covered planning for your detail shots and also the technical approach to capturing the details, let's add on a little bit more to that wedding detail list. So wedding details add sentimental value to your images, and it is also the experience that you give your bride during this time with her that adds on to that value. On the day of the wedding, there is a team behind the bridal look, and including this team as part of the bridal details can trigger happy emotions when the bride looks back at her images. And capturing the makeup artists and the hairstylists in their elements and using interesting angles to get them can add so much of creative flair to the wedding album design. The bonus of this is sharing these images with the makeup artists and the hairstylists, and this can help to boost your network referrals. I love capturing the details on the bride or having the bride next to them, and there's a variety you can work with, and the secret here is just to be creative, as this will become your time and the bride awaits your direction. Once she is done with hair and makeup, I love placing the bride next to the wedding dress where she is admiring it and just getting those moments. Also having the details on her, like her bracelet and her earrings. And the reason why I add these to the wedding details is because it gives me a variety to play with when it comes to designing the wedding album. It also adds a lot of emotion to the story of the album. So we have covered planning for your detail shots, the technical requirements for your detail shots, and lighting situations. And there's something that you need to remember. Wedding photography is all about love and emotions, and most of the time, as a photographer, you need to place your expectations aside and do what is best in the interest of the bride. So never underestimate the requirements of your bride, for every bride is different, so treat each one of them in their own unique way. A part of her is in those details that she has chosen for her wedding, and it plays a very sentimental value to those images. For her, it is very precious, and having these details as part of a gallery and album design ensures that you always get referrals from your clients. Now that we are done with the bridal prepping session, we are going to move on to the groom's getting ready session, the venue deco shots, and the ring shots.
While Fatima is doing bridal prep, I will shoot off to the groom to get groom prep pics, and then to the venue to get wedding deco pics. In my bag, I have my favorite camera, the Sony a7R III. I have a 50mm f1.8, a 16-35mm f2.8 G Master, a 70-200 f2.8 G Master, and a speed light. When I get to where the groom is, I will always first look for the best available natural light, and then also for some interesting light. I always start out by shooting individual details first, using either my 70-200 or the 50mm f1.8. I prefer using the 70-200 because of the compression and because of the separation it gives, and I always shoot with wide open apertures. Again, this is purely because I want to create depth in my images. After the groom is fully dressed, I then get a couple of posed images of him showcasing the details that I captured earlier. I also make a habit of asking if there's anything in particular that he wants captured. So it could be an engraving on the inside of a ring or on a tie-pin, or it could be some sentimental value to the cufflinks that he's using. In this way, I am leaving him with enough images that might have some sentimental value to him, but also with enough images in terms of album design and layout. Our clients spend lavishly on wedding decor, so it's imperative for us to get as much detail as possible, even of the wedding decor. In most instances, I would get to the venue while the decor artist is still busy setting or dressing the hall. So it would be impossible for me to get any wide shots. So I typically start out by doing smaller detail individual shots using either my 50mm f1.8 or my 70-200 f2.8. Again, the go-to for me would be my 70-200 because I love that compression and I love the separation. I also walk around the hall looking for interesting light and interesting angles. One tip to remember, and this is not only true for decor pics, I think it's true for all forms of photography, always check your background. You do not want your background to detract from the subject that you are shooting. I will do individual table settings, I will do pics of individual centerpieces. If there's flowers that have been put out, I will start taking detailed images of those flowers until I'm able to use my wide angle lens to get wider images of the hall. At that point, if possible, I always ask for the hall to be emptied because we do not like getting images of people in our decor shots. I would slap on my 16-35mm and I'd get a few images from the back of the hall and from the front of the hall, typically at apertures between f5.6 and f8 because we want maximum depth of field to get as much detail in those images as possible. Once that's done, I would then do individual detailed images even with my 16-35mm, but this time I would shoot at f2.8. I love doing that because it creates depth on two levels. On the first level, it creates depth in terms of your depth of field, and on the second level, it creates depth in terms of distortion applied. A good tip when it comes to wedding decor images, do not think that nothing is unimportant in terms of decor. If it's been placed on the table, get an image of it. You would be surprised at just how important even the smallest detail could be to the bride or her family. One of the features that I love of the Sony mirrorless system is that you are able to have a level, the rule of thirds and grid lines displayed in your LCD and in the viewfinder at the same time. This helps tremendously when it comes to framing, especially when shooting with wide angle lenses. I always set my focus mode to autofocus continuous. This is because this allows the focus to track if I inadvertently move, and this is purely because I'm shooting wide open. And I also set my focus area to flexible spot small, which allows me to focus with pinpoint accuracy. We always use a macro lens for our ring shots. Macro lenses are amazing in that you can get a true 1:1 depiction of whatever you are shooting. These lenses have been engineered for extremely close focusing and can take extremely sharp, highly detailed images. We always look for an interesting background to shoot the rings against, and we always use an LED panel to light up our rings. The reason for the LED panel is it allows us to either brighten or darken the image without having to change any settings on the camera, and it also gives us very directional light to get the shadows that we want. Don't be afraid of shadows. Shadows creates contrast, and it's another way of creating depth in an image.
So we have covered a lot when it comes to photographing wedding details, and now we're going to move on to the wedding reception. We have the most amazing wedding decor artist, and it would be a shame not to incorporate their decor in the bridal portraits. We usually have a small creative shoot on stage after all the formalities and while the meals are being served. We use one light for all of these type of bridal portraits, and we always expose for the ambient and then just light up the couple with our strobe.
This not only separates the couple from the background, but it makes them the focal point of all our images, no matter how we frame the images. But it also shows off a little bit of the background without it becoming too distracting. Our go-to lens for most of these portraits is the 70-200 G Master lens, but depending on the space that we're working in or the decor details that we're working with, we sometimes use the Zeiss 55mm or the 16-35 G Master. Our focus mode is once again set to autofocus continuous. This will allow for tracking of whatever we're focusing on, and our focus area is set to flexible spot small, once again to pinpoint accurately where we want to focus on. This is also where we use the amazing eye autofocus of the Sony mirrorless system. Once we activate eye autofocus, it locks onto either the bride or the groom's eye, whoever is the subject of the image, and it tracks the eye no matter where we frame them in the pic. This allows us to move them wherever we want without having to focus and recompose, especially if we're shooting at wide open apertures.
Once again, we shoot with the album in mind and always ensure that we have wide, medium and tight shots, as well as landscape and portrait images of every pose.
So let's recap. We've discussed how we plan our shots for a typical wedding day, the gear we use, how to improvise if you are shooting in a limited environment, but most importantly, how to add sentimental value to your images. Following these guidelines and adding your own creative flair will guarantee that you get great images that will add value to your business. As with everything, practice makes perfect. So shoot, and keep shooting. The Sony mirrorless system has an amazing autofocus system that allows you to shoot wide open. Do not be afraid to shoot wide open. Do not be afraid to push your ISO, and do not be afraid to break the rules of photography if you want to.
Your emphasis on the wedding detail will add emotional value to the wedding album. And for us, the wedding album is the story of the bridal couple's special day that was shared with family and friends. We hope you enjoyed this video. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook to check out our work. And keep an eye on the Sony Alpha Universe site for more upcoming videos, and we cannot wait to share more of our wedding photography tips.